Jace walked alone through the wreckage of a forgotten ship buried deep in the sands of a dying moon. The wind outside howled like a hungry beast, but inside the metal shell, it was quiet. Too quiet. He wiped sweat from his forehead, his breathing, slow and heavy in his helmet. This place was old, abandoned, and broken, but still had parts he could sell. That's all he wanted. Scrap, wires, fuel cells, maybe a power core if he got lucky. His flashlight flickered across bent walls and torn floors. He stepped carefully, watching every corner. The ship once belonged to smugglers. That much was clear. Crates were smashed open, crates marked with alien warning signs. He didn't care what they had smuggled, not his problem. Jace moved deeper into the dark corridor. A rusted metal door caught his eye. It looked out of place, sealed tight and hidden behind old panels. Curious, he removed some wiring and found a small control pad covered in dust. He pressed a button, then another, and suddenly, click, clang, whir. The door groaned, gears grinding as if waking from a long sleep. Red lights blinked, then turned green. The door opened slowly, air hissing out like a sigh. Jace took a step back, ready to run if something jumped out, but nothing came. Inside the room was darkness. He shined his light and froze. In front of him were at least a dozen figures, sitting, chained, silent, eyes wide, glowing faintly in the beam of his flashlight. Alien girls, thin, scared and staring straight at him. They didn't scream, they didn't move. One girl with blue skin and glowing lines down her arms slowly stood up. She spoke in a weak, broken voice. "Are you safe?" Jace opened his mouth, but no words came out. He hadn't meant to find people, not like this. He looked around the room, metal collars around their necks, blinking weak red lights. Their wrists were bruised, their clothes thin and torn. They had been trapped for who knows how long, hidden, forgotten, thrown away like broken tools. The blue girl stepped forward again, trembling but brave. She reached out slowly, like she didn't trust her own arms. Jace didn't move. He let her touch his sleeve, then like a signal the others stood too. Silent, cautious, hopeful. I didn't know, Jace said softly, even though they might not understand. I was just looking for parts. The girl looked at the others, then back at him. You opened the door, she whispered. We thought no one would ever come. Jace's heart beat faster. He didn't want this, didn't plan for this. He was just a scavenger, a loner, not a rescuer. But how could he leave them now? Their eyes told stories of pain, of waiting, of wanting to be free. One of the smaller girls collapsed suddenly, too weak to stand. Jace rushed over, lifting her gently. She was so light, too light. He laid her on the floor and took out his ration, pack offering water and food. The others watched, still unsure, still afraid it was a trick. It's okay, he said. I won't hurt you. He handed the food to the blue girl and nodded. She took it carefully, breaking it into small pieces and sharing it among them. They ate slowly, like every bite might disappear. No one spoke much, but their eyes never left him. Jace sat on the floor, tired, confused, overwhelmed. He didn't know what to do next. He didn't even know their names, but they were alive, and that meant something. He looked back at the rusted door, still open behind them. One mistake, one button, one accident, that's all it took. He had freed them without meaning to, and now they refused to leave him. Even as the moon wind screamed outside the broken ship, inside that room, something had changed. A man who came looking for junk had found lives instead, and for the first time in years, Jace didn't feel alone. Jace sat quietly inside the old ship, watching the group of alien girls huddled together near the wall. The light from his lamp flickered softly, casting long shadows across the broken metal floor. He still couldn't believe what he had found. They weren't dangerous, not even loud. They were just tired, thin, and scared. He handed another pack of food to the blue-skinned girl, the one who had spoken first. She took it gently, her hands shaking. Thank you, she whispered, her voice small but clearer now. Jace gave a nod, unsure what to say. He had never been good with people, let alone a group of alien girls who had been enslaved. The smaller girl, the one who had fainted earlier, now sat with her back against the wall. She had eaten just a little and fallen asleep on Jace's old blanket. The others were still watching him closely, not with fear now, but with something else, like they were waiting for him to tell them what to do next. "I'm not the one you were waiting for," Jace said, more to himself than to them, but the blue girl tilted her head. "You opened the doors," she replied softly. "We were waiting for that." He looked at their collars again, thick metal bands with blinking red lights. He leaned closer to examine one, careful not to touch without permission. "May I?" he asked gently. The girl nodded, her silver eyes focused on him. The collar had a small control chip on the side. Blinking slowly, Jace recognized the design. Slave tech used by smugglers. Old, illegal, but still dangerous. If someone turned it back on, it could shock or even paralyze the wearer. "No wonder they didn't run," he muttered. "These things probably punish disobedience." He sighed, reaching into his tool bag. "I can disable it," he said. "But I'll need time." Ray, that was the name the blue girl finally gave, watched him with cautious hope. "Then we'll wait," she said simply. It hit Jace hard, the way she said it, like waiting was all they had ever done. He began working, carefully cutting wires and bypassing circuits. The first collar clicked and went dark. Ray gasped, touching her bare neck for the first time in years. The others gathered close, whispering to each other in their own language. One by one, he disabled the rest, and the blinking light stopped for good. "I should call someone," Jace said quietly. "Someone who can help you all." "No," Ray said quickly, her tone turning sharp. The others stiffened. "They'll take us back," she added, "or put us in another cage with new rules." Jace didn't know what to say. He wasn't a soldier or a leader, just a mechanic. But these girls had decided. He was something more. "You're safe now," he said, "but I need to know, why were you here? Why didn't anyone come for you?" Ray sat down across from him, the others circling close. "We were taken from different planets," she began. "Some of us were born in cages, others were sold. This ship was supposed to transfer us to a new buyer, but it crashed. The smugglers abandoned us, sealed the room so no one would find us, and left." That truth hit Jace like a hammer. They weren't just prisoners, they were forgotten cargo. No one came, no one searched, no one cared, until him, and even he had come by accident. "You can't stay in this ship," Jace said. "The air filters are weak and power's almost gone." "There's a shelter not far from here," he added. "An old mining outpost, maybe a few miles east." "We'll go there." Ray nodded. "If you lead us." He hesitated. "I don't know if I can protect you," he admitted. Ray smiled, not with joy but with calm. "You already have," she said, "and we're not leaving you." That night, they moved to his shuttle, a cramped old cargo pod barely large enough for 3 people. They squeezed. In sitting on the floor, sharing blankets and warmth, Jace gave them water, explained how the oxygen worked. They listened to every word like he was teaching something sacred. When he finally closed his eyes, he felt the smallest girl curl up beside him. She didn't say anything, just rested her head on his side, and Ray sat nearby, quietly watching the stars through the cracked window. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of trust, soft breathing, and something else, something like hope. Jace realized then, he couldn't walk away now. Not because they needed him, but because, for the first time, he needed them too. The shuttle shook as Jace guided it across the rough surface of the moon. The sky above was not calm. It burned with streaks of light, a storm of solar fire racing through the system. Warning alarms flashed on his console, red symbols pulsing with urgency. He clenched his jaw, knowing that if they stayed outside when the storm hit, they would all be cooked alive. The alien girls sat pressed against each other in the back of the shuttle, their faces pale in the dim glow. They didn't complain, didn't ask questions, but he could feel their fear filling the air like smoke. Ray sat closest to him, her silver eyes locked on the console. "What is happening?" she asked softly, her voice calm but tight. "Radiation storm," Jace replied, his hands gripping the controls. "Deadly if we're not inside a shield." The shuttle creaked under the strain of the rising winds. Dust and shards of rock slammed against the hull like fists. Jace's heart raced as he pushed the thrusters, aiming for a canyon he had marked long ago. There was an old maintenance shelter there, half buried but still shielded. If he could get them inside before the storm peaked, they had a chance. The smallest girl whimpered when the shuttle tilted sharply. Ray wrapped an arm around her, holding her steady, whispering something in her language. Jace risked a glance back and saw them huddled together, their glowing skin patterns faint but comforting to one another. He felt a sudden surge of determination. Stronger than fear, he had stumbled into this responsibility, but now he had to keep them alive. The canyon came into view through the storm's haze. Its jagged walls rose like the jaws of a beast, but hidden within was the shelter, a round metal dome scarred by time. Jace landed the shuttle hard, the landing, gear screeching against stone. "Move," he shouted, unstrapping himself. "We have to get inside now." The girls followed quickly, their thin bodies fighting the fierce wind. Jace carried the smallest one in his arms, shielding her from flying sand. Ray helped guide the others, her steps strong despite the storm pushing against her. Together they stumbled across the rocky ground until Jace forced the shelter door open. The heavy door slammed shut behind them. The storm outside roared like a monster, but inside the shelter silence returned. The air was stale but breathable, the walls humming faintly with old shielding systems. Jace dropped to his knees, exhausted, the girl still clinging to his neck. He set her down gently, brushing the dust from her hair. The others gathered in a corner, shaking, coughing. But alive, Ray turned to Jace, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. "You saved us again," she said, simple and true. Jace shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "I only got us here," he said. "But this place won't last long. The systems are weak." He moved quickly, pulling out tools from his pack. The shelter's old generator groaned when he tried to start it, sparks flying. He cursed under his breath and began rewiring. The girls watched him work, their eyes wide. One of them, older than the rest, crawled closer and touched a wrench with uncertain hands. Jace paused, then nodded. "Here," he said, showing her where to hold the light. Her hands shook at first, but she steadied. Soon Ray joined too, passing him wires, asking short questions. In broken English, "You fix everything," she said, not as a question but as a statement. Jace gave a tired smile. "Not everything, but I try." Hours passed, the storm still raging outside. But inside the shelter, something shifted. The generator came alive with a low hum. The lights flickered back to life. The girls gasped, their faces brightening under the soft glow. For the first time since he met them, they looked less like shadows and more like living people. That night, as the storm screamed outside, they gathered around a small heater Jace managed to repair. The warmth spread slowly, melting the cold from their bones. Ray sat beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "You could have left us in the ship," she said quietly. "But you didn't." Jace stared at the heater's glow, unsure how to answer. After a long pause, he said, "I don't leave people behind." The smallest girl leaned against his arm, already asleep. The others curled close together, whispering softly before drifting into dreams. Ray kept her silver eyes on him, as if searching for the truth inside. His words, "You are not like them," she said at last, her voice almost a whisper. Jace closed his eyes, the weight of exhaustion pulling him down. He wasn't sure who them was. Slavers, smugglers, or maybe all humans. But in that shelter, with the storm raging and the girls breathing safe around him, he decided he didn't need an answer. For now, keeping them alive was enough. When the storm finally passed, the sky above the canyon cleared. The stars shone bright again, cold and sharp, scattered across the endless black. Jace stood at the edge of the shelter door, staring at the silent horizon. The land was empty, dead, nothing but rock and dust. Yet he knew there was something out there, something that might give them a better chance. A few miles east beyond the cliffs, an abandoned colony still waited. It had been empty for years. Long before Jace ever set foot on this moon, he had passed by it once during scavenging runs, half ruined, half standing, old houses, metal walls, storage rooms, maybe even working systems if luck was on his side. It wasn't much, but it was better than a rusted shelter with failing filters. He turned back to the girls who sat in a circle near the weak heater. Ray looked up at him, her silver eyes questioning. "We can't stay here," Jace said, his voice firm but tired. "There's a colony nearby, not far. If we can reach it, we'll have real shelter, food, maybe power." Ray didn't hesitate. She stood at once and nodded. "Then we follow," she said, simple and clear. The others echoed her with small murmurs, their voices soft but determined. They didn't ask for proof, didn't ask if it was safe. They trusted him, fully, almost painfully. Jace gathered what supplies he had left. His ration packs were low, his water filters old, but he packed them anyway. He fixed straps around the smallest girl so he could carry her on his back when she grew too weak. The older ones walked close, supporting each other, their thin legs shaking but strong with will. Together, they left the canyon and stepped into the open world. The journey was long, the ground rough and uneven. Every step sent echoes into the silent wasteland. The sun above burned harsh, its light bouncing off the white dust. Jace walked ahead, scanning the horizon for danger. Behind him, the girls walked in a tight cluster, their eyes always fixed. On his back, by the second mile, one of them stumbled, nearly collapsing. Jace caught her before she hit the ground. "Rest," he said, forcing a break, though time pressed heavy on his mind. He shared water, careful to divide it evenly. The smallest girl reached for his hand as she drank, holding it tightly, refusing to let go. Ray walked beside him now, her step steady though her body was thin. "You wonder why we stay," she said softly, not looking at him. Jace frowned. "I freed you. You could go anywhere." Her silver eyes flicked toward him, sharp yet sad. "We have nowhere to go. No homes waiting, no families searching. We only have you now." Her words pressed heavy against his heart. He didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, he kept walking, his mind a storm of thoughts. He had never wanted to lead anyone, never wanted to be responsible for lives, but the truth was simple. They had chosen him. At last, the colony came into view, its broken towers rising from the dust like old bones, metal roofs bent and twisted, walls cracked, but still standing. As they drew closer, Jace felt a strange shiver. The place was silent, abandoned, yet full of echoes of lives long gone. Children had once played here. Families had once built homes here. Now only ghosts remained. He pushed open the first door they found, the hinges squealing. Inside was dust, old furniture, shattered glass, but also storage units. He forced one open and found sealed containers of dried rations. The girls gasped softly, their eyes wide. As he handed out the food for the first time, they ate until they were full, their hands no longer shaking. They searched deeper, finding a large central hall. It still had power lines running through the walls. Jace worked on the old generator, sparks flying as he connected wires. Finally, the lights flickered on, dim but alive. The girls looked around in awe, their faces glowing under the warm shine. The night. They made beds from blankets found in storage. It was the first real night of rest since Jace had met them. They laughed quietly among themselves, whispering in their language. Ray sat across from Jace, watching the others with a small smile. "Do you see?" she said. "You gave us more than freedom. You gave us a place to breathe." Jace shook his head, staring at the glowing lamps. "I didn't give you anything. I just opened a door," he said. But Ray leaned closer, her silver eyes steady. "Sometimes, opening a door is enough to change everything." Jace looked around the hall at the girls who had stopped being shadows. For the first time, he felt the weight of what had begun. This forgotten colony was more than shelter. It was a beginning, fragile but real. And even if he hadn't asked for it, he knew. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was their protector, their anchor, and they would not leave him, not now, not ever. The colony felt alive again. Even though it was half broken, Jace had fixed the generator, patched the filters, and given the alien girls a place to rest. For a few days, life was quiet, filled with simple routines. They cleaned rooms, cooked simple meals from old rations, and even laughed softly at night. But peace never lasted long, not out here, not in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. One morning, as Jace repaired a water pump outside, a sharp tone rang from his wrist comm. He froze, his heart pounding. A signal. It wasn't his, and it wasn't from the colony's systems. Someone had picked up their presence. He looked at the sky, and there it was. A ship, descending fast, lights cutting through the clouds of dust. The girls rushed out, their faces pale, their bodies stiff with fear. Ray grabbed his arm, her voice shaking. "Who are they?" Jace stared at the craft, markings of the Galactic Patrol clear on its hull. "Lawmen," he muttered, "or something close to it." The ship landed with a heavy thud, its engines throwing sand across the ruins. Metal doors hissed open, and armored figures stepped out, weapons at their sides. They weren't smugglers, not slavers. These were officials, soldiers of order. The officer at the front lifted his helmet, revealing sharp eyes that scanned the group. "You there, human?" he called. "Are you responsible for this colony being reactivated?" Jace didn't answer right away, his hand instinctively shifting closer to Ray and the girls. The officer stepped forward, his boots crunching against the stone. "We detected distress signals, unauthorized signals," he said. "Our orders are to secure all surviving cargo and transfer them to council stations." The girls flinched at the word cargo, pressing closer to Jace, their silver eyes filled with terror, their hands gripping his sleeve. Jace felt anger boil in his chest. "They're not cargo," he snapped, his voice echoing off the ruined walls. "They're people, survivors, forgotten by your council." The officer's eyes narrowed, his hand resting on his weapon. "You have no authority to claim them, human. Step aside." Ray trembled, but she did not hide. She stepped beside Jace, her chin raised though her voice shook. "We will not go back," she whispered, her words clear enough to make the officer pause. The others clung to her and to Jace, their fear plain, but their choice louder than fear. Jace took a slow breath, his heart heavy but his resolve steady. "If you want them," he said, "you'll have to take them over me." The soldiers shifted, tense, waiting for orders. The officer studied him for a long moment, then lowered his hand from his weapon. He wasn't used to resistance, especially from a lone scavenger. "You're protecting them?" the officer asked, disbelief in his tone. Jace's jaw tightened. "Someone has to," he said. The officer exhaled sharply, then tapped his comm. "We'll file a report. The council will decide their status," he said. "For now, keep them here. But know this. Eyes are on you now." With that, the soldiers turned back toward their ship. Engines roared and the craft lifted into the sky, leaving dust and silence behind. Jace stood frozen, every muscle tight, watching until the ship vanished into the dark. The girls didn't speak, didn't move until Ray finally touched his arm. "They wanted to take us," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jace knelt beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. "They didn't," he said, "and they won't, not while I'm here." The others gathered close, wrapping around him in a circle of trembling arms. They weren't just afraid of cages. They were afraid of being forgotten again, Jace realized. Then that the patrol ship was only the beginning. Soon the council, the media, maybe even bounty hunters would come. All of them would want to decide what should happen to these girls. That night, the colony felt heavier. The lights flickered, the generator hummed, but the air was thick with unspoken fear. Jace sat by the heater, staring into the dim glow. Ray sat across from him, her silver eyes steady even in the shadows. "You stood between us and them," she said, her voice soft but fierce. Jace shook his head slowly. "I didn't have a choice." "Yes, you did," Ray replied. "And you Chose us. The weight of her words pressed against him. He wasn't just keeping them alive anymore. He was standing against the galaxy itself, and deep down he knew he would do it again, no matter the cost. The colony was no longer silent. Where once only dust and wind lived, now voices filled the air. The alien girls laughed softly as they worked, sweeping out old rooms, fixing beds, cleaning broken walls. Jace moved among them, carrying tools, patching holes, repairing pipes. Every day the ruins felt less like a grave and more like a home, but peace never stayed hidden for long. Word of what happened with the patrol ship spread faster than Jace expected. Signals traveled across the stars, whispered through channels, repeated by traders and wanderers. The human who freed slaves, they called him, a scavenger who had stumbled into history. One morning, Jace stepped outside to find a small drone hovering near the colony. It flashed a red light, recording, broadcasting. Voices buzzed through its speakers, reporters from orbit demanding answers. Human, is it true you freed an entire group of slaves by accident? Do they see you as their leader? Will you turn them over to the council? Jace ignored the drone, turning back inside, but the girls had heard. They crowded around him, their eyes wide, their bodies tense. Ray looked at him firmly. They speak of us like objects, she said, anger sharp in her soft voice. Jace nodded, his jaw tight. They don't understand yet, but they will. That evening, Ray sat with him in the main hall, the glow of repaired lamps shining on her face. You gave us names, she said suddenly. Jace blinked, surprised. What do you mean? She smiled faintly, sadness in her silver eyes. In the cages we were numbers, codes, not people. But you asked for our names. You speak them every day. That is something no one else ever gave. The others joined in, each sharing the name Jace had insisted on learning. Lyra, the youngest with hair like pale moonlight. Sana, who had once been strong but now walked with a limp. Vea, quiet but clever with tools. They said their names proudly, like treasures finally remembered. And Ray added softly, to us you are not Jace anymore. You are home. The words sank into his chest, heavier than any burden, warmer than any fire. He tried to protest, shaking his head. I'm just a scavenger. I can't be that. But Ray placed her hand over his, firm and steady. You already are, she said, and the others nodded. They weren't asking. They were telling him. Days turned into weeks, and the story reached farther. Other scavengers came by, curious, bringing supplies in trade. Some were kind, offering food and tools. Others were sharp-eyed, whispering of bounties, of councils that wanted control. Jace stood his ground each time, refusing to let anyone take the girls away. The council sent messages too, official and cold. They demanded updates, requested transfer of the rescued assets. Jace never answered. He shut down the comms and focused on fixing broken roofs and digging new wells. But he knew the silence wouldn't last. Inside the colony, life grew stronger. The girls learned to help with repairs, their thin hands growing steady with tools. They cooked meals from the rations they found, filling the halls with smells of food instead of dust. They sang quietly at night, voices rising like soft waves. And Jace, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a man drifting through life. He felt rooted, anchored by the people who had chosen him. But the galaxy watched, always watching. One evening, another drone arrived, larger than before, shining bright lights into the colony. It projected Jace's image across the stars. The human protector, the broadcasts called him. Some praised him as a hero, others mocked him as a fool. But no matter what the galaxy said, inside the colony the truth was clear. He wasn't just the one who freed them. He was the reason they could smile again. Ray sat beside him under the night sky, the stars endless above. Do you regret it? She asked softly. Jace looked at her, then at the others sleeping peacefully inside the hall. No, he said simply. I don't regret a single thing. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then we will stay. no matter what comes. The wind moved gently through the broken towers, carrying their voices into the dark. Jace leaned back, staring at the stars. He had never asked for this life, never asked for fame or responsibility, but now he bore a name carried among the stars. Protector Home, the human who would not let go. And deep inside he knew he would carry that name as long as they needed him. The message from the Galactic Council arrived one morning, carried by a sleek silver drone. Its voice echoed across the hall of the colony, sharp and official. The rescued individuals are hereby recognized as free beings, with the right to travel, to resettle, and to choose their futures. The drone repeated the statement twice, then flew away into the sky, leaving silence behind. The girls sat together, staring at the empty air where the drone had been. Their eyes were wide, their breaths shallow. They understood what it meant. After years of being locked in cages, years of being treated like numbers and property, they were free. No chains, no collars, no hidden locks waiting to close again. Jace stood at the front of the hall, his hands folded tight. He looked at Ray, then at each of the others. "You heard it," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "You're free now. You can go wherever you want. No one can stop you. Not even me." The words tasted heavy on his tongue. He had been waiting for this, hoping for it, but also fearing it. They deserved freedom, every one of them, but freedom also meant they might leave, and though he told himself it was right, the thought cut deeper than he expected. For a long time, no one moved. The hall was silent except for the faint hum of the repaired generator. Finally, Ray rose to her feet, her glowing marks faint under the dim lights. She walked slowly toward Jace, her steps soft but firm. The others followed her with their eyes waiting. She stopped in front of him, lifting her chin. "You say we can go?" she said softly. "But where would we go?" Jace blinked, unsure how to answer. "There are colonies, cities, whole worlds," he said. "You could build new lives, find people of your own kind." Ray shook her head, silver eyes burning. "We already did." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers cool but steady. "This place, these walls, this man who opened the door, we found our home already." The others stood now, one by one, moving closer, their voices rising softly. "I stay," whispered Lyra, clutching her blanket. "I stay," said Sana, leaning on her sister. "I stay," murmured Vea. Holding the small tool Jace had given her, one after another they spoke, until the hall was filled with their voices. Each word was soft, but together they rang like a storm. Jace's throat tightened, his chest heavy with emotion. He shook his head slowly. "You don't owe me anything, not your lives, not your future." Ray's hand tightened on his, her silver eyes fierce. "We know," she said, "but it is not about owing, it is about choosing, and we choose you." The air felt alive, charged. With something stronger than any chain, Jace looked at them, all of them, and saw not prisoners, not survivors, but people. People who had suffered and still found the strength to choose. They weren't following him out of fear or need anymore. They were staying because they wanted to. That night, the colony glowed with quiet light. The girls decorated the hall with scraps of cloth, old lanterns, pieces of color scavenged from the ruins. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They sang again, louder this time, voices rising through the broken roofs into the stars. Their laughter echoed down the empty streets, filling the dead colony with life again. Jace sat among them, a cup of warm drink in his hand. For once he didn't feel like an outsider watching from the shadows. He laughed when they laughed, smiled when they smiled. The smallest girl curled in his lap, asleep, while the others leaned against each other in comfort. He realized then, he wasn't just protecting them anymore. They were protecting him too, giving him something he never thought he'd have again, a home, a family, a reason to keep going. The galaxy might call him many things, scavenger, fool, protector, even hero. But in this forgotten colony, in this hall of broken walls and glowing lamps, he was simply Jace. And to them that was enough, more than enough. As the stars stretched across the sky outside, Jace whispered to himself, "This started with an accident. But as he looked at Ray's steady gaze, the girls' peaceful faces, the warmth that filled the hall, he knew the truth. Accidents end, but families last. And whatever storms came next, they would face them together, because they had chosen to stay.